Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the NFL Draft Triple Take right here on Steelers.com. I'm Mike Prisuta from Steelers.com and the Steelers Radio Network, joined by a couple of guys I've been talking a lot of draft with of late, Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson. You can hear those guys on SNR, Steeler Nation Radio's The Drive. You can also catch them here at Steelers.com and the Steelers Radio Network, and pretty much anywhere and everywhere where people are talking Steelers. And we've been talking draft for a while now. We've got another position preview for you. Today we are going to hit the safety position. And Dale, you've made mention during a couple of our defensive breakdowns here about chess pieces and guys that you can move around and still have a good matchup, guys that you don't have to worry about getting exposed when the offense changes personnel. That probably shows up more at safety than anywhere, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and you see that with safeties. I've been asked a lot about, why would a team, if they've got two starting safeties in place, draft another one high? And that's the idea, because you can play these guys in nickel defenses and dime defenses. You can use them as a linebacker if you want. They can play. A lot of these guys play slot cornerback. They can do a lot of different things because of the body type and the skill sets that they have. I mean, safeties, I think, are a little underrated, I think, by some fans, in that they are those chess pieces. You see some of them move to eventually to linebacker because they have some of those traits as well. So, yeah, the safety position, I think, is an interesting one.
Yeah, it's great when you can find it, but unfortunately, Matt, you got to trade up into the top 10 or get a Derwin James pretty high. They're hard to find. They are not readily available, and I would say this year, you're going to look a long time for that guy.
Yeah, it's not the best class, that's for sure. It wouldn't shock me if there's not a first-round pick. And even just from a scouting perspective, and this is true every year, it's hard to find quality tape of safeties that you can really analyze. I mean, you may get 3 or 4 snaps a game where you can really see him play in space or do a lot of things. And to Dale's point, I do think versatility is probably the trait you covet the most. If he's a tenth slow on his 40, I can live with it. If he doesn't take false steps, and if he can do a lot of different things, because more than ever in the history of the league, offenses are doing a great job of creating mismatches for their skill guys. And if you could have a jack of all trades that can fill in and not get exposed, that goes a long way.
And you're seeing these guys, they're becoming that hybrid linebacker, right? I mean,
a lot of them.
Probably one of the best players in this year's draft, Isaiah Simmons, could play safety and could be the first safety off the board, but he's probably going to be that hybrid linebacker type and play closer to the ball and closer to the middle of the field.
Right, and Dale made a great point in the linebacker conversation. Sure, he could play deep middle, which is a trait that's really hard to find, especially from young safeties. But a guy like Simmons is more impactful the closer to the line of scrimmage he is. That applies to Derwin James as well.
Yeah, so we all moved Simmons to the linebacker group, so he's not up for discussion right now. But counting him down from 5, Dale, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, I've got Ashton Davis of Cal at 5, and he's an interesting guy, Mike, in that he was a walk-on at Cal. He was a track star in high school, ran hurdles and did those kind of things. And then at the end of the season had surgery in December on his groin and wasn't able to work out at the combine, and was really looking forward to getting out and running at his pro day. Obviously, those got canceled. So you know that this guy's fast, but you don't know quite how fast. And so, the fact that he wasn't able to work out or do anything at the combine, it's kind of a Heath Miller type situation where he's a good football player and had a lot of production at Cal. And I think he could be one of those guys that Matt talked about who could play the deep middle of the field. And those guys are kind of hard to find a lot of times in the draft because so many teams ask their safeties to drop down and play in the box. And, box safeties are a little easier to find. But, if you look at this kid as well, his backstory is fantastic. His parents were both struggled with drugs, and he, kind of is a self-made guy and obviously went to Cal. He's a bright kid as well. So I'm going to be interested to see where he goes. If you look at all the draft analysis on him, it's anywhere from, middle of the second round to, almost early 4th round, anywhere from pick 40 to pick 110, because nobody really knows about the medicals this year. So up in the air because of the lack of the combine stuff, and then no medical recheck at the combine.
Yeah, that uncertainty scared me off just a little bit. He's not in my top 5, but Matt, you and Dale are on the same page, both checking in at number 5 with the kid from Cal.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add. Dale laid that out really well. I mean, this kid has worked and earned everything he's gotten. He has a really tough mentality, and he brings that to the field, has that play demeanor that you like. I mean, he is an aggressive, nasty dude on the field, and I'm sure that came from all his off-the-field hardships. The deep center fielder types, there's just fewer of them every year, so they carry a little more weight. But he can also come down and play the slot against, bigger receivers, smaller tight ends. I think he's a pretty good player. And if he does go, really anywhere in the 3rd round or later, could be a real prize for somebody that if you had more information, probably goes higher.
My number 5 is Jeremy Chin of Southern Illinois. And I keep looking at 6'3", 221 pounds, and that linebacker type of guy. Maybe the hybrid 2.0. Certainly not a guy that you're going to take in the top 10 or 15 selections, but maybe a guy that could work out that way for you. Dale, Chin is 4th on your list, and Matt, he's 4th on yours as well. You guys see him more as a guy. He's going to be more boxed in center field, but he might be able to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think he can. You don't usually take a guy that big and put him in center field, but I think Chin could do that for you if you needed him to. He's certainly fast enough to be that kind of guy. But you just wonder about the step up in competition from Southern Illinois to the NFL. It might take him a little time to kind of acclimate to the NFL. But 6'3", 221, as you mentioned, and he ran a 4.4, 540. You could find a place to put that guy somewhere in your defense.
Yeah, and it's a good point because coming from Southern Illinois to the NFL is a big enough jump anyway. But when you watch his tape, he's clearly the most talented guy in the field almost every snap. And I don't know that his play recognition is top notch. So it's great for us to sit here on this video and say, boy, he could play linebacker. He could rush off the edge. He could do all these things like we mentioned with like an Isaiah Simmons. But if he's not great at recognizing things, he's not going to be able to pull that off. But boy, there's so many traits here.
My number 4, and we're gonna disagree a little bit on this guy, Matt. I'm gonna particularly disagree with you. I've got Grant Delpit of LSU, a guy I like, a guy who played hurt last year, and the guy's coming out of a big school and a national championship program at LSU. I've got him at 4. Matt, you've got him at number 1. Let's cut to the chase and have you sing his praises.
Well, I don't love him. I mean, he was my number 1, and there were 3 guys that we'll get to that I really thought were interchangeable, and depends what you look at. And I went out and gave Delpit the benefit of the doubt in that his tape this last year really wasn't that great. I mean, he missed an obscene amount of tackles, but he also was playing with an injury, and it wasn't like he was turning tackles. Right.
Play if you're safety.
Yeah, I mean, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt in that it wasn't like he was turning tackles down. He'd come down to break down, and he'd lose his balance or not be in proper form, and I bet his ankle's killing him. And it's funny because this kind of relates to the Steelers a little bit. Like when the Steelers made the Minka trade very early in the season, immediately you look at, well, who's the best safety in this draft coming out at that point? Well, it was far and away it was Delpit, in that his tape 2 years ago from LSU was so strong and so rangy and prototypical size, but I'm giving him a big benefit of the doubt by putting him 1. It's also an indictment on the rest of the class isn't that good.
Dale, you've got him at 3. Kind of same line of thought there.
Yeah, I mean, I like him, but I didn't love the tape of last season. But LSU has a good track record of putting out pro defensive backs, and Ed Ogeron compared him to Troy Polamalu, and
Tigers.
and he coached Troy Polamalu when he was an assistant coach at USC. So. You give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there, but I couldn't put him over the other 2 guys that I have up higher because they did have better tape last year.
Yeah, Matt, looking at number 3, you and I are in agreement. Antoine Winfield Jr. from Minnesota. Dale's a lot higher on him. But I just love the production. He gets to the ball. He takes the ball away. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he's also got that legacy thing going. We've talked about that in a couple of our other draft previews here. He is the son of Antoine Winfield, former first-round pick and former Jim Thorpe Award winner and longtime NFL DB. The only thing I don't like about him is he's 5'9" and an eighth, but I'm overlooking it.
Yeah, and it's funny because on the drive, Dale and I talk about this guy a lot because we really like his game. And I kind of talked out both sides of my mouth in that on the radio, I'm like, he's my number one safety. Yeah, I love his tape. And then when I put it to paper, I moved him to 3 because he's short. I mean, just every day when he wakes up, he's going to be 5 inches shorter than the tight ends he's going against. And that I held against him a little bit. And the difference between 1 and 3 on my list is minimal. But, boy, he plays like Daddy, who is a nasty, tough corner, does everything really well, good blitzer, somebody you absolutely want on your team. I mean, would be an elite special teamer, to say the least, but brings much more to the table than that. I know Dale loves him, so I'm going to defer to him. But I kind of feel bad for Mr. Winfield Jr. because I've been talking him up as number 1, and I put him at 3.
Now, Dale, is it true that this guy shot up your board right after Minnesota beat Penn State?
Absolutely, Mike. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's just a playmaker, and that's what you want at that position. Can come down and play in the slot. Can play deep safety if you want him to. Can come down, and yes, he's going to struggle with some of the bigger tight ends because he's 5'9", but he does have a 36-inch vertical, so he does have a lot of athleticism. Runs well, does everything well. He's a solid double to me, and I know what I'm getting with him. I know that he's going to know how to play the game. He's grown up around it all his life. I trust that. I think that means something. And, again, the tape in 2019 was just outstanding. That Minnesota team, nobody expected a lot out of them, and he was one of the big reasons why they were a good football team.
Matt, I wanted to ask you about that as well, because Dale's absolutely right about that. They were very good at the end of the year, and they haven't done much, since Murray Warmoth. Prior to a growing program, a guy that signs on and helps build as opposed to jumping on board and being the next big thing from Alabama. You get a little props for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just even in my recruiting experience, you dealt with some kids who, Larry Fitzgerald was like this. He said, you guys are a good program, but I want to take it to the next level. You throw the ball a lot at Pitt. That says a lot. And some of it is also code for, I think I can play early here.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Speaking of the next big thing from Alabama, you guys both have Xavier McKinney at number 2 on your list. Dale, as we mentioned, you've got Winfield 1. Matt, you've got Grant Delpit 1. I'm taking a little bit of a different direction here. I've got McKinney 1 and Kyle Duggar number 2, the kid from Lenore Ryan. And Matt, I know he's coming from Division II, but I see 6'7", 217 pounds, and I watched him closely at the Senior Bowl. Well, from afar. I watched the practices in the game on television, but I saw this guy making stops on 3rd and 1 in the backfield. I saw him covering the tight end. I saw him making tackles in the open field. He was doing all that against Division I players, the running back Kelly from UCLA and the tight end Troutman from Dayton. He's a late bloomer. He wasn't that big initially and didn't get any Division I looks, but he's got the track record. He's got the take the ball away skills. He's got the return game. I'm in. I'm gonna overlook Lenore Ryan and say why not?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And Duggar and Kayvon Wallace for Clemson were my just missed guys, so he wasn't far off my list. A little bit overaged. He's already over 24 years old, but a very similar combine and physical traits to Chin in, super fast, good size, in the box type. I did hold his level competition against him a little, and when I watched some of the Lenore Ryan highlights and tape, one thing I noticed from him was he kind of just lined up in the same spot, like 12 yards off the ball. When something happened in front of him, he closed on it and blew up guys that are going to be ditch diggers and accountants. So I just don't know that he's going to adjust super quickly.
Yeah, I banged him a little bit too because of the age thing. You know, you get a guy that's 24 years old. If he takes any amount of time to get into the starting lineup, now you get a problem. You know, now he's, 25, 26 years old before he's even a starter. That's kind of like drafting a 26-year-old quarterback in the first round. Not that we've ever seen any teams do that, but, it's just that I hold that against some of these guys. As much as you look at a guy and you say, well, he's only 20, that's a big deal. There's a big difference between a 20-year-old and a 24-year-old. And so, I think that while he may already be as good as he's going to be. Now, it's pretty good, but wasn't good enough to make my top 5.
Dale, to that point, I remember the year that I was scouting with the Browns, I was watching this lineman, and they were playing against BYU, and this older scout to me kind of leans over and is like, you realize he's playing against like 25-year-old men, and this kid's 19. You're like, oh, yeah, I guess he is,
Yeah, there's a big difference in strength. Yeah.
Yeah, well, hey, you got to differentiate somewhere when you make these lists. And we got maybe not a ton of good safeties, but a bunch of them.
No.
Well, 5 that we just went over, they can all help a team. It's just a question of what you like. Guys, that's going to do it for safety. Appreciate it. As always, I want to remind everybody that we're going to continue breaking down the different positions here at Steelers.com in advance of Thursday's first round. So this is the place that you're going to want to come back to. For Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson, I'm Mike Prisuta. You have been listening to another edition of Steelers.com's NFL Draft Triple Take. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.